Hi, I clicked on today's tropical tidbit for Friday. Still lots going on in the Atlantic over here. We're still watching this old front sitting down in the Gulf of Mexico. A lot of energy escaping to the northeast out of this, and it still looks, every morning I look at this, it doesn't look any different to me. It seems to be stuck in the same kind of situation over here. Every morning I see slight rotation with weak low pressure in here with scattered thunderstorms but nothing organized. And again, in a couple of days this will eventually move inland and bring some rain perhaps to Texas. I don't see anything serious coming out of it, but keep an eye on it just in case to see if it tries to feed back under a marginally favorable upper level environment. Nothing going on in the Caribbean. We got our hurricane train over here. We got Danielle moving out. We got Earl, and Danielle's looking pretty nice. She became a major hurricane overnight over here. If we zoom in on Danielle, we can see her eye was looking very nice earlier this morning. Is just now in the last couple of hours starting to fill in with some more clouds, and the core is starting to look a little less healthy, and that's because of all this dry air that continues to get sucked into her. And you can see this very pronouncedly on the water vapor loop over here. Dry air getting sucked into the southeast quadrant and wrapped into the system circulation. This is what I thought would keep her intensity limited. I mentioned a Cat 4 was possible if she performed well yesterday. She did. She barely made it to Cat 4. You can see the eye was very clear and dry last night, which was a great structure. I mentioned that Cat 5 is really impossible in a situation like this. For a Category 5 you need perfect conditions. This is far from perfect. The system is a little bit more lopsided. Outflow is impressive but elongated. The dry air getting wrapped in, and the trough that recurves her will eventually start shearing her from the southwest. So Cat 4 is all this is going to be, probably a minimal low-end Cat 4, and she looks like she is back down to Cat 3 by this time, with the eye starting to fill up and the core looking a little bit less symmetrical. And we can see that the trough that was curving her northwest is leaving the ridge build in a little bit to her north, and that's why we're seeing a little more of a westerly movement right now. But she is going to curve back out, probably east of Bermuda, as this big trough sinks in over here and recurves her right out. But this is the westerly movement that can bring her close enough to bring perhaps tropical storm force winds to Bermuda if she's close enough, and perhaps some rain. So these folks should still be on the watch to see what kind of bad weather they can get from her. If we look over here at Earl, we can see he's still traveling fairly west, maybe just north of due west over here. Impressive outflow from Danielle, pressing down on him right now, shearing him a little bit, putting in some confluence over here. He's still dealing with a little bit of dry air around himself, but he's moving into a progressively warmer ocean over here. You can see the sea surface temperatures get much warmer as you go farther west over here, and he will eventually strengthen. This is the story this year. We've had a kind of pattern where it's very dry in the northeast Atlantic over here, but once these things get farther west and you get west of 50 west and 60 west, these things really start to go. Notice Danielle, what she did as soon as she got over here. She was rather sickly for a time in here where Earl is, but by the time she got in here, like I described the pattern, you can see that it's favorable for things to blow up in here rather than out here. And this is the danger for us over here in the United States, is that if these things wait to blow up, they're more liable to take farther southerly tracks if they wait. If they blow up in here, they're more liable to recurve farther east. But Earl, I think, will be coming and eventually recurving out either near Bermuda or between Bermuda and the United States. He's going to be a closer call and more of a threat and a headache to more people. First, the northern islands have to watch to see if he comes close enough to take a swipe at them. Then Bermuda has to watch to see if he curves out over here, and then the Carolinas may also have to watch if he comes close enough to them. But I do think eventually this is going to miss the United States, but farther west than Danielle missed. And these are in succession starting to come farther south and farther west. What we're going to have to watch is Fiona. Here's our hurricane train over here, wave train Danielle, Earl, what will probably be Fiona, a couple more waves behind. This could be a problem down the road. They're starting to come farther south with time. Danielle goes out, Earl comes farther west, Fiona even farther west maybe. We'll have to see how it goes over here. What I want to do is I want to walk you through the European from last night, and I'm sure a lot of you have seen this already. This is day 2 over here. You can see Danielle recurving out over here. This is Earl approaching the northern islands. This is Fiona developing behind. We go out to day 4 over here. Danielle lifts out, and here's Earl. Now we start wondering whether Earl's going to recurve. And what happens over here is you can see the ridge centered over the central eastern seaboard over here. Now, with this weakness draped down in here, there's a pretty substantial break in the ridge right here. So you've got Earl trying to come northwest into this weakness for a time, and we start to wonder, well, the trough's lifting out, wouldn't the ridge build in and block this and bring him west? Well, if the weakness is already trying to bring him northwest in here, this ridge is centered pretty far south, so by the time he gets into here, the ridge is standing in his way of coming west-northwest, and because of how far south it is, he can't come into the U.S. coast. He actually has to go out on this particular run. So we go out to day 6 and you can see him curving out, but this is Bermuda's right under him on this run. The eye is directly over Bermuda on this particular run. So this is, even though the ridge is building over the top over here, he's finding the break and going right through and on out, and this is a situation where Bermuda would have to watch out. This is Fiona back behind in the similar location to where Earl was on this run, northeast of the Leeward Islands over here. We go out to day 8, and this is Earl recurving out. You can see this trough coming down. Now here's something I want you to notice. Notice the height lines coming in with this trough, where the colors change are the height lines. Notice how tightly packed they are over here, and let's compare. Let's go back to day 2 over here. Look at the trough that's recurving. Danielle, do you see how loose the pressure gradient is over here? How far apart the height lines are? This is a very relaxed trough, just laying down here, breaking the ridge, very nonchalant, just recurving the storm. We go over here to day 8. We see these tightly packed height lines, and what this means is that the trough is encountering resistance, creating a tighter pressure gradient and a stronger jet between the trough and the ridge over here. And what could be causing this resistance? Well, if we look over at the anomaly chart for the European days 8 through 10, we notice the big ridge over the eastern Aleutians, big trough over Western Canada, and what this does is this forces downstream. You have to raise these heights over here. You have to raise these heights. This teleconnects to ridging building over here. So these heights are trying to rise over southeast Canada and the northeast US. Eventually you have to build ridging in here. So if we go back to the European day 8, you got this trough coming down, but it's encountering resistance because the pattern is forcing the heights to try to rise in here. So you got Earl going out, the trough is coming across. Now if we go to day 9, instead of the trough just relaxing and nonchalantly lopping down and forming a big old weakness in the ridge, it's encountering more resistance in here. It's coming across and out, and you can see the ridge showing up behind. And here's Fiona sitting east of the Bahamas. We go out to day 10, the ridge builds over the top. Here's the hurricane underneath, and this is probably the scariest run you will ever see on the European. It doesn't get much scarier than this for people who watch the models. 921 millibar hurricane heading west-northwest towards the southeast U.S. coast beneath a building ridge, which means there's no way out for the storm at this point. This would be a landfall if the run went any farther than day 10. And this is a long-range model run, but this is a pattern I wanted to show you because this is the setup. And a couple of days ago I showed you the UK Met ensemble forecast for the 500 millibar height pattern this year. Cold PDO favors the ridge south of the Aleutians, the trough over the eastern Gulf of Alaska and western Canada. It forces height rises in here, height falls in here, so you get the trough forced out over the central Atlantic, the ridge builds in here, whatever's coming underneath gets trapped, and that's how you can get long track storms making landfall on the United States. And we see the Canadian now showing the same thing, showing a hurricane just east of Florida in 10 days, very similar location to the European. Now, also something I want you to notice is that just a couple days ago I was showing you the same image from the Canadian day 10, and remember it was showing homegrown type mischief developing in this area by day 10 because the hurricanes were recurving out. You got a trough split kind of come across, lowering heights and pressures in here, and we got a little bit of a low forming. What it has done is simply replaced that with the Hurricane Fiona coming out of the eastern Atlantic. This is the kind of pattern where you look for this stuff. Remember, I was showing you yesterday how if these hurricanes are recurving, the pattern still favors something. The ridge is building in here regardless of whether the hurricanes recurve. And so we're still looking for pieces of energy dropping off over here, lowering pressures. You can see how low the heights are in the European over here, even around the hurricane. Blips over here and very low heights in general in the Southwest Atlantic Basin. It's the kind of pattern that if the hurricanes are recurving out to the east, we're watching for something to brew on its own in the Southwest Atlantic Basin anyway, but we could just as easily replace that with a Cape Verde hurricane getting caught under the pattern and coming in. So the message here from the models is that for the first week of September at least, and probably for the rest of the season really, but for the first week of September we need to be watching the Southwest Atlantic Basin for mischief and a storm perhaps threatening the U.S. coast, and whether that be from homegrown mischief while the storms are already curving out here, or from a Cape Verde hurricane punching in like Fiona on this run. It could be either one. But Fiona has the best chance to come farther south of these three storms, and it's something to watch for because the pattern favors the ridge building farther north this time, and taking the storms progressively farther south and west could be a threat. This is looking like a similar situation to something that happened in 1964. It's one of our analog years for this season that brought a hurricane right into the southeast coast from this angle. So this is something we should be watching closely, and hopefully everyone's ready. Alright, that's it for today. Thanks for watching.